everybody. We just passed the halfway point last night and we are cruising purposely towards destiny. It was great seeing your drafts last week. I hadn't heard from all of you in the weekly progress check, so it was great to see where all of you are in the process and how things are going. As you all saw last week, some students are making more progress than others. Some students are almost done with their projects. Others are not quite as done with their projects. Some of them have begun to revise the proposal and hasn't got much farther than that. So some of you still have a lot more work to do, and that's okay. We still have just under 4 weeks to complete the final draft, so all hope is not lost. I did ask some of you to submit additional drafts this week so that I can be sure that you are on the trajectory to success, as we might put it. Please submit those through the ungraded progress check drop boxes this week on Brightspace. We don't have anything else going on in class this week, so I want you to put all of your effort and energy and time and thought into completing and revising this monster. You will submit your next draft to me at the end of next week. That one will not have a peer review component, so it'll just be me commenting on that one. Anyway, that's still to come. We'll talk more about that next week. For now, I have two things that I'd like to discuss briefly. First, I want you to think deeply about the critiques that you received last week and be judicious in what advice from those critiques that you decide to incorporate into your project. Ultimately, it is your name on the finished project, not the peer reviewers, so you need to be sure that the project remains yours and that it remains in your voice with your interests and your arguments and all of that. Do not let yourself get too far swayed by people who might take you in a different direction. Don't blindly accept everything that the reviewers said. Some of the critiques we received last week were very good and will help you hone your argument, fill in some gaps, and engage with the existing literature. Some of the critiques, not just here, but in all walks of life, some critiques may lead you down a dangerous rabbit hole that could derail your entire project. You need to be able to distinguish between those two. I'm happy to discuss this, so if you come across an instance where you just can't decide how to take a piece of advice or some criticism that you receive from another student, or even if you receive advice and criticism from me, and you have questions about what that means or how you should incorporate it or whether you should incorporate it, feel free to run it by me, and I will give you my interpretation of that and let you know what I think. My word isn't necessarily gospel, but I will help you arrive at a decision. All right, so that's number one. Number two, now that you are moving into the final weeks of the project, it's time to start thinking hard about how to make your project appeal to different audiences. Hopefully you talked about that a bit during the project proposal process, but it's something to think about again. I think I shared in the discussion board last week that one of my grad school advisors loved to ask me, so what? After I submitted anything to him, whether it was a draft or a final project, it was always, so what? Who cares? I'm not going to lie. That's tough to hear, and it's hard to respond when someone kind of attacks you in that way. It's not really an attack, but when someone comes at you that way and wants you to justify your work that way. Because it seems completely obvious. To me, this is important. I took time and energy to research this thing and write it. Obviously, it's important. But he is addressing an important concept. All of that stuff I just said about that project, it's important to me. Obviously, it's important to me. I like that topic. I like that topic enough to go do all that research. However, not everybody's going to like that topic. Not everybody's going to be interested in that topic. And so I have to figure out how to make that interesting to other people. It's kind of like your loved ones probably don't care one bit about the topic of your capstone. They just want you to finish the damn thing. They don't really care what the topic is. So your job as a historian is to make people want to read your work. So you need to make your project relevant to other people outside of your particular field. Now remember, it takes time and energy to write this paper, as you are well aware. It also takes a lot of time to read a lot of time and energy to read these projects, as I can attest after reading all of your drafts last week. Why should a reader invest all that time and energy into your project? You need to have an answer for that. So, for example, I am a policy historian. I spend my life reading memos and studying executive actions and executive agencies and rulemaking and regulations, all of which is very boring to a lot of people. I get that. So I have to figure out how to make that interesting to all those other people who are otherwise bored by it. So in my dissertation, I took that policy making stuff and tried to make it relevant to broader audiences by bringing in things like, political conservatism and the environmental movement and how those two movements intersected, where they crossed, where they diverged, in that way, and making it interesting to other people who don't care one bit about policy making. On the flip side, military history often just bores the hell out of me. I usually couldn't care less which movement, which unit moved to this part of the battlefield in support of this other unit. That stuff is yawn-inducing in my mind. I'm picking on military historians because they can take it, and if you military historians want to, meet me after class and just show me how I'm wrong, then by all means, that's fine. You can take me, no problem. But there are really good military histories out there, though, that do just that. They have figured out a way to make it interesting to me, when I shouldn't be interested in that stuff. But it does happen. And so, the point here is that you need to ask yourself, so what and who cares, while you're entering this home stretch in the project. Think seriously about your answer, and then make that answer clear in your project. You need to convince everybody that's reading your paper that this is worth reading. It's not worth just closing the file and going off and doing something else. Make sure you make that clear. Okay, I think that's it for now. It was great hearing from you all last week. Keep in touch. Let me know when you run into any obstacles this week, and I will try to help you get past them as usual. So keep going, and I will see you next week.